Welcome to Mom's Writers Club. I'm Jessica.
And I'm Sarah.
And today, instead of the 12 days of Christmas, we are going to tell you about the 12 things that surprised us about publishing. Was that good or bad?
That was awesome.
So,
Oh, wait, that's the wrong song.
this is tea.
That's New York, New York.
That is not tea.
Jess is having tea. I'm having a Manhattan.
In my defense, it's a little
huge...
earlier here.
It is. And it's kind of early here for Manhattan, too. But it has been desperate times lately.
Yeah,
it is. Actually, it's 4:38. So,
and you know what? If I were where Sarah is, I too would be having a Manhattan because she makes a great drink.
It's a really good Manhattan.
I'm jealous. Okay, let's do some housekeeping real fast. Is that the key? Okay.
Well, actually, expensive everything, because if you only have 3 ingredients in a drink, they better be good.
The expensive stuff does make all the difference, especially the expensive cherries. People keep asking me if I put maraschino cherries in my old fashions, and I'm like, no.
Oh, well, not those nasty pink ones from the store.
If it's not $20 a bottle, you're getting the wrong kind.
You're getting the wrong cherries. Yeah, it's true.
Okay. So housekeeping. Everybody, we now have a Moms Writers Club newsletter. Woo-hoo. We are not going to send out a bunch of crap on it, but I've been asked many times, hey, can you message me on Twitter to remind me about Moms Writers Club on Wednesday nights? And no, I can't, because I am very busy and I have my own child and I have to set a reminder for myself to make sure I get there on time. So I definitely cannot message a lot of people, though I totally understand why you're asking and I'm not trying to put you down. But this newsletter will remind you. The goal is to send it out every other Wednesday with our chats. I also plan on posting, like, when we have our next writing sprint, you'll get like an email about that a couple of weeks in advance. And it would be awesome if when our members have like a book coming out, they can like have that added. So you can email about that. So if you check out our website, which is linked down below, it's jessicapayne.net/momswritersclub. There's a sign up there. And then we had some other bit of news. Oh, we have 2022 coffee mugs, notebooks, etc. on our Zazzle page, also linked down below. You may have to scroll to the bottom of the shop to see them. I've been struggling with Zazzle, but they are there, and it's all the money that we make from it, which is actually a very small amount. Does go back to help fund Moms Writers Club things. Like Sarah and I pay out of pocket for some of the like computer programs we have to use and for our Zoom account. So it just goes back to help fund that. All right, without further ado, let's get into our 12 things. Sarah, do you want to start with the first one?
All right, how long everything takes. It's unbelievable how long everything takes. I mean,
yeah.
Okay, so I had the first inkling of an idea for this book in probably 2015. And I started writing like the first just blah, 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 the stuff that just gets dumped out on the page before you really know that it's a book yet. 2015. And my book will be published in March of 2023.
That's a long time.
So that's maybe a little more, on the extreme end. I don't know. Some people take 10 years to write a book.
I wrote mine in 2020 and it's being published in 2022. So that's a little less time.
That's pretty good.
But everything takes a long time. Like getting an agent, I think it took me 3 years. Publishing deals usually take at least a couple years. And that's once the book is, finished and going on sub. And I'm trying to think of what else.
And then like once you got your agent, you spent 6 months revising your book, right?
Yeah, maybe a little less than that.
So you're like, I got an agent, yes. And you're super psyched. But then you're like, okay, now the work begins. So I was like, yep. I got an agent, yes. And she sold my book, yes. And now like I just turned in my manuscript like 3 weeks ago to my editor, and she's going to get me an edit letter back in probably about 3 or 4 weeks from now. And then guess what I get to do? I get to edit it again. It takes so long.
We actually asked this question on Twitter to make sure we didn't miss anything. And something a lot of people mentioned and that I've learned from reading up on it is that how much of marketing once you're published falls on the author. And obviously like most publishing companies do some things and put effort in, but that the author really is expected to help promote their book as well.
We'll share more once we know what that really looks like.
We're still getting into that.
I think we're in a unique time period compared to the past where there are actually things that you can do as an author to promote your book, short of like getting in your car and going on the road physically or spending a lot of your own money. I mean, you can do this social media thing. So, and it's also, it's also different if you traditionally publish versus self-publishing, because self-publishing, you are your own marketing department.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of, whether you reach readers. Okay. Being able to write well is not enough. Plot is necessary.
Okay. This one's actually mine. I wrote this one down, but yeah, I guess it Okay, so like I had been told
Yeah.
my whole life, you're such a good writer. So when I sat down to write my first book, I mean, I had tried to write many books and like always ended at 20K or 40K and like never written a
Right.
whole book.
Right.
But like I just did not realize how freaking hard it was going to be to figure out how to write a book, because it doesn't matter that you are a great writer or that you can build good characters. They have to do
Or write
something. There
great
has to be a story.
sentences, or like
Yeah,
come up with the
exactly.
like primo metaphor, like all that stuff is like what you think
Yeah.
of as being writerly, but
Yeah.
actually, yeah, you need a story.
So much about it is being a good storyteller, and that has
Mm.
been one of the biggest things I've had to like learn and figure out, and it's something like I'm still figuring out, although I've gotten a lot better at it. But yeah, being a good writer isn't enough. You actually have to be able to like tell a story and have a plot that makes sense and character
And that's
arcs,
part of being a good writer. I have read books where it's like the writing is stunning, but I'm like,
nothing happened.
nothing's happening here. Actually, I've read a lot of short stories like that. I've read a lot of literary, like in literary journals where I'm reading this short story and I'm like, really? Like that's all that happens? I just read 3,000 words and the guy got his hair cut, you know?
It's a really good haircut, okay?
I don't know. Was not a 3,000 word haircut. Anyway, plot is necessary, very important.
Okay.
Okay.
um
The language, the lingo, right?
oh yeah. Okay, so like what is a query letter? When you're a brand new writer, you're like, a what? Query to
Hmm.
me, like using that word sounds very like British or something. Like it's
I
not
know. That does.
outside of like the world of writers, that's not actually a word that's used super often. So I was like, a what?
Okay, so I
But
have this funny
yeah,
story to tell, whether this
tell,
will stay
please.
in or not. But so I had a relative over for Thanksgiving who is an artist, and she has a new boyfriend. And she was like, man, like, how do you clean your brushes? That's the kind of pillow talk I want right now. And I
How
was
do you
like,
clean your brushes?
like, just being able to speak the language. Like, once you actually absorb all this language and start using it, then you're like, oh, you speak my language. You know what a query is, a synopsis is, you know what narrative distance is, you know what
POV,
POV
WIP.
means, yeah, work in progress, all that stuff. You know what it all means. But at the beginning, you're like, what?
Oh, what? We're gonna do an episode on that one of these
Yes, we
days.
are, because it's kind of fun. I actually love jargon in every profession and in every, I don't know, every
You know what
art
I don't
form.
love it in? The
Mm.
military. My husband's in the military, and
Mm.
he's like, yeah, the ABHDHIJK. And you're like, the what? And he's like, I told
Oh,
you
they're
this
all
last week. And you're like,
yeah,
okay.
it's not as fun when they're all acronyms. But when you talk about like fucking tensile strength and the Draper point and stuff like that, you're like, ooh, that must be something cool, right?
That sounds awful to me. I'm glad you nerd out on it, but I'm like, the
Yeah,
what?
that's blacksmithing lingo.
Oh, okay. Market trends. I was surprised that this was like a thing. And when you stop and think about it, it makes sense. Of course, like in any industry, there are market trends, but I guess I didn't even think about writing as an industry because so much of it
Mm.
is creative and an art. So thinking about like genre trends and genre norms and trying to, not that you should do this, but like write to the market or at least be aware of what the market is, that totally took me by surprise. I was like, what?
Mm.
And is a big part of because I wrote two contemporary fantasies, was a big part of I think the problem I was having is that I was so off trend. I was so 10 years ago that like nobody wanted to
Mm.
read anything I wrote.
Mhm.
I got a lot of like, oh, this writing's good, but it was a decade ago that this sort of stuff was selling. So yeah, that surprised
Mm.
me.
Yeah, and also I think our friend on Twitter was talking about how fickle the market is and how quickly
Hmm.
it changes. And
Yeah.
while you may think that one thing is like really hot right now, by the time you finish your book and get an agent and your agent pitches it, like that may be so 3 years ago.
Okay, next up. Well, this is a good one. And I'm glad someone pointed
Mm.
this out.
I love this one.
How welcoming the writing community can be, how selfless, especially on Twitter.
Right, and how generous people are.
Yeah, people have been so generous with their time and with their advice. And it's something that like I try to pay back because I had great people who were so wonderful to me when I was getting started.
Yeah.
And I know that everybody's probably had their bad experience, but for the most part, I personally feel like the writing community is just Like all my best friends are in the writing community now.
I know. I
There's so
really
many good
love it. I mean,
people.
I was super nervous to get on back on social media. I was super nervous to even like say that I was a writer, but slowly over years, I've, built up this whole community and this network, and it's so nice. I mean, people have been so great with their, like you said, with their time, their advice, their energy, just like even when something great happens that people like hit the like button and send you a little
Yeah.
congratulations and like, and you're like, yay, it's a party, other people appreciate how big this is. And I've had DMs. I've gone back and forth with people in DMs, like them helping me helping them. I found my critique partners through this network. I mean, I became friends with Jess through this network. It just like it's really awesome. I must say that I super hyper curate my feed so that that's about all I see on Twitter. Like
Same.
I avoid politics like the plague, any of the other
Yeah.
bullshit. Like my Twitter is all writing stuff and it is so nice.
Yeah. Same. When I'm just like, I just want to talk writing, just hopping on Twitter, I know I'll find it no matter what time of day it is.
Yep. So this was a weird one. So I was surprised, like especially when I was going through the call with agents. I spoke to 3 different agents. And then when I had my offer call with my editor, I was weirdly surprised at how they just loved books. Like I wrote a book, they read my book and they were like, I loved this book. Like I just loved it and here's why, and I just loved this about the character and that about the story, and oh my god, then they're blah, blah, blah. And like kind of how effusive and psyched they were. They were like the ultimate engaged reader. And somehow I didn't expect that. Like I expected them to be like a little cooler and more like businessy, you know?
That's funny.
I know. I
My
surprise.
my face hurts because I'm like smiling so much with this episode, which was I did not think would be the case. I thought this would be more of a not a negative episode, but mostly like, gosh, I can't believe this thing about publishing. And it's totally like, we love everybody.
Right.
I kind of wonder if one of the reasons we feel this way about we feel like the writing community is so welcoming, and that we were kind of surprised by how agents and editors are so like positive. If some of it is because we've been working in healthcare, where like, okay, and this is not everybody, so please don't anyone take it that way. But like things have gotten better in the last decade. But when I started as a new nurse, the whole nurses eat their young thing was very true. And I stopped working as a nurse about 3 years
nurses
ago.
eat their young is a way of referring to the hazing of brand new nurses by experienced nurses, which is bullshit. Should not happen.
It's
if you're a nurse,
awful.
Don't do it.
Yeah, it is awful. Being like set up for failure as a new nurse, people just being rude or mean or not wanting to help you, which is crazy to me because we're all in this to like help people. So anyway, getting back to the point, I kind of wonder if it's because of the field we're kind of coming from, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And although I think probably a lot of people in a lot of fields have
that's true,
less than supportive work environments.
I just like had to wonder about that a little bit. But yeah, and I know people have bad experiences with publishing too. We're not trying to say everything's perfect all the time.
Oh, not at all.
These are just some things that we've felt lately. Okay, moving on.
Okay, yeah, this one was mine too. So this is another weird one. I was surprised by how much success would trigger my anxiety. So file this under problems you want to have. I totally appreciate that. I would much rather like endure this anxiety and have the success that I've had than not. But at the same time, I was like, I don't know. Okay. So for a person who deals with anxiety, big changes require an adjustment period. And when something really awesome comes on really quickly, it can just really I don't even know how to describe it. But
it can just mess with your equilibrium.
It's something really to adjust with your equilibrium.
And I think it's pressure. It's pressure because and it's kind of similar to imposter syndrome, but it's like, well, I've had this success. I don't want to fuck it up now. Like I have to maintain this. And that's a pressure that you didn't have before.
Yeah. So that's actually, this is, this one is definitely coming within the context of the fact that I'm working on my second book of my contract, and I have finally gotten rolling on it, and I'm excited about it. And, I'm sure everybody is right when they tell me, you know what, you did it once, you can do it again. But I definitely have this one trick pony syndrome. Like I wrote one good book and that's it. And I can't do it again, again, problems you want to have.
Okay, next up, how hard it gets to find learning opportunities at a higher level. And I think it is amazing. There are so many opportunities and like resources out there for authors who are querying and who have not been published yet. But when you start looking at writing conferences, and I noticed this about a month after I signed with my agent, I looked at one that I had been really excited to go to, and 75% of the programming was basically how to get an agent or pitch sessions with agents. And that's great. I love that there's that kind of support out there.
I mean, it just your options get fewer and fewer the further along you get.
Yeah, but you
Like
still
when
want to
I
like work at making your writing better and
yes,
work at
yes.
understanding the industry better. And
That's a big one
yeah,
for me is looking for, like craft focused seminars. Like when I started, I took, 5 or 6 workshops locally. There's a couple of like residential summer things like Suwannee Writers Workshop and Bread Loaf and stuff like that. They're very literary focused and expensive and hard to get into. So I've just really been looking for like a workshop or an online thing or a seminar or something, you know, at a higher craft level. And it's just not that much. We already did that
I
one.
don't remember who posted this, how many times I'd have to read my own book, which is hilarious. So the book that I have publishing in May of 2022, I have done like multiple revisions of it, and I'm probably about to read it for the 14th time.
Oh,
At least the 14th time, at least, like
yeah.
from start to finish.
I almost wish I had counted because I can't
Yes.
imagine how many times I have read this book.
It's funny because then when you write something new, it feels so unfamiliar that it actually,
Yeah.
like, for me, it kind of throws me for a loop. I'm like, wait a second, because you almost don't recognize it because you almost have the other book memorized.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
but you feel really intimate with it after a while, which is kind of a cool feeling. Like you can
Yeah, I
flip to
mean,
literally any page and know exactly everything.
yeah. I mean, that's the fun thing about getting that deep with a work is that I feel like I get the whole thing in my consciousness. Like I can think about the entire thing all at once.
Yeah.
And I don't feel that way at first, and that's uncomfortable because I'm like, what about that piece? I don't know that piece yet. Like, I don't really know what happened with them 15 years ago when, he was 19 and she was 23 and they met and what happened? And that's where I am right now. I'm like, well, but this, but my book that's more further along, I'm like, oh, I know exactly. I know everything back to when they were fucking born. And it's just like this whole world that I absolutely know. I read this
It makes,
interview with
yeah.
Jane Smiley once, who's a wonderful author, won a lot of awards. Um, and she was talking about thinking about her different books and how she thinks about them like in this. I hope I can represent this right. In this like big open space, almost like they're planets, and they look different. And some of them are farther from her, and some of them are closer to her. And one of them she described as being almost like a stained glass planet, and then it was so interesting like
I
that
like
they
that.
they had this like full existence in this weird part of her psyche.
I like that because Sarah and I have talked a little bit about this. Some books like just feel, well, every book feels a little bit different to you and like how close you feel to it and or what part of you it pulls at, because there's like a
Yeah,
piece of me in every
yeah,
book I write, but it's
yeah,
very different for each book.
yeah.
Um Earlier, well, a couple months ago, we were talking about like knowing the details, and it makes me think of a jigsaw puzzle. And when you're like you've got the corners and maybe you've got like a little section figured out here, and that's how I feel at the
Hmm.
beginning of a book, where like I've got bits and pieces, and then like once you've written it and like read it 14 times, you can see the whole picture down to
Yeah.
like the littlest puzzle piece.
Oh, this one made me sad. This one came in
Yeah,
on Twitter. How few friends or family actually read books or care.
I
What do you think
can
about that?
kind of relate. I think that I have several friends who will probably buy the book and not read it, and I'm okay with that. Like they're not big readers. My husband has never read anything of mine, but he also, has been super busy with PA school and
I have given my work to a few friends, just like as beta readers, not like I'm expecting, major feedback from them. And one of them didn't finish it.
that's
And
always
another
a little
one,
awkward. And then you
it
don't
was
want to like
really
bring it up again.
awkward. She was really busy. I get it, but she didn't finish it. Another one didn't finish it. But on the whole, I've been surprised. Well, particularly in my workplace right now,
Yeah.
I have been somewhat surprised how like totally psyched everybody is for me. and they're like, oh my God, like, and this is not that I wrote a book, this is that I'm getting a book published. And like people ask me about it. They're like, they haven't seen me for a couple of weeks. So they're like, how's the book thing going? And like,
Oh,
I mean, there are like 40 or 50 nurses that I work with. And they kind of all know now. And
that's
they're all
cool.
very psyched for me. And they're like, oh, we want to know when it comes out and we're going to buy it. Blah, blah, blah. So that's
That's
been
wonderful.
gratifying. But it is kind of weird when people are like, they don't read your book.
You know what I think is weird? I have started telling people that I meet like at the playground that I'm an author now. And it's one of those things where like I'm not expecting them to like want to know every detail of my life. But it's one of those things where when I would tell people I'm a nurse, they would ask questions about it. And I
Mm,
think it's so weird that like, because for me, if I met an author, I would want to know everything, and given I'm an author.
yeah.
But like I think it's so weird that like they look at me like I'm really strange and then like change the topic. And even if I've met them multiple times, never, 3 different people now, never ask another question about it.
That's so
And like it's
interesting.
fine because like I mean these are just like people I randomly see every now and then, but I think it's so strange,
That is kind
right?
of
Because
weird.
the thing is, like, even if they told me that they had a job that I consider very boring, so pick your
Yeah.
random boring job, I would still like ask them about it because
Yeah.
we're like on the playground. Like
Well, maybe they've just never met an author before and they have
maybe,
absolutely no idea what to even ask you. And they're like
yeah.
kind of scared of you because you're so cool.
That is definitely it.
If you're like, I'm a nurse, they can be like, oh, what hospitals do you work at? What's your specialty?
If you say
Do
you're
you
a nurse,
like it?
everybody loves you. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're like, you must be so nice, and you're like,
Right. But if you say you're an author, they're a little bit like,
I kill fictional people for a living. I'm not that nice.
okay. So the next one is how hard it is to find an agent.
Well, so when I started writing my first book for NaNoWriMo in 2018, I like didn't know how publishing worked at all. So I started like looking it up. And I didn't even know you needed an agent to like, not obviously not all publishers require one, but like a lot of them do, the bigger ones do. And then yeah, like I had like it's just this giant thing I had no idea about. And it's hard to get an agent, really hard.
I
Okay,
don't know
moving
what
on.
to add to that. You know, it's like, I think the really hard part is writing a publishable book.
Yeah, that's
I
hard too.
think I think for me, and this is just being totally honest about my process, is
Mhm.
that yes, it was hard. And now I can look back on it and see that the book that I wrote that got me my agent and sold, I can see what's different about that book from the other two.
You're right. I
And
can see the same thing.
and that one was not hard to get an agent. Like if I had
Yeah.
written that book first, if like somehow luck had blessed me that I had just like come up with that whole thing and been that good, like right off the bat, I bet it would not have been hard.
And I think so. This is my fourth book I got an agent with, and it is a lot different. But I also think that that's not always the case for everyone. If you've written a book that like is great but is not going to sell on the market right now, it's going to be really hard to get an agent. So I wouldn't say that like if
Yeah.
you haven't gotten an agent, it means your book is bad necessarily.
Yeah, no, no. And what I said was
That's
publishable.
not what we're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There you go,
I did
publishable, and
not
I
say
would
bad.
agree.
I said
Yeah,
publishable. Like, and that is very fickle. Fickle.
follicle.
Fickle. That's a very it's a movable term. It moves all over the place, and that actually leads us into maybe we'll skip over the next one. How much of it is luck and timing?
That is like shocking when you like stop and think about it, but it's true. You need to like write a good enough book, and it needs to fit into the market, and you need to find the right agent at the right time and right
And you
publisher,
need
the
to
right
maybe
editor.
like not have accidentally written a pandemic book,
They're in a pandemic.
you know, like 2 years ago, and then all of a sudden, like nobody fucking wants to read about the pandemic. It's like, can you imagine Station 11
They're
coming out right now?
they're starting to come out with pandemic books.
Ugh.
I think it's called 56 Days came out. It actually has done pretty well.
Oh, really? You know, I've read a couple things about like books that an author wrote, you know, and gave to their agent, but like some like geopolitical thing happened that made it so that like that just was an unsellable book. And
I know someone that just happened to as well. Like
ugh,
politics changed in a
yeah.
specific way, or certain things within politics changed, and what would have been a great book is just not going to sell on the
And
market
you just never
suddenly.
know. You just
Yeah.
never know about that. So it's like that goes back to my thing of like the odds are really long and I'm going to write what I want to write and hope for the best.
Okay, so our last thing is editing. Editing, how much there will be, and how complex it is. And I would agree. I mean, I knew I needed to edit that first book, but to me that meant like fixing commas and maybe changing language a little bit. I didn't realize I'd be rewriting sections of my book and rearranging the order of the scenes and making sure the character arc is complete. And oh, I probably need to add 2 characters in to round things out better. And that's just the first round. That's your developmental edit. That's
I
before
know.
line
I wish
edits, copy
I
edits.
wish I had known about that. That whole like edit for structure first is kind of the way I think about it. And
Why do you wish you had known about it?
I feel like I spent a lot of time polishing,
Yeah.
meaning like I made the sentences really beautiful, I made the dialogue really beautiful, and that's all good. Like I think that was a learning experience, but I kind of wish I had known that I also needed to turn down that level of detail and get at the big structural stuff.
I think that's all of our topics. Do you have any other ones
That
to
is
add?
12. That is
Okay,
the
let me make sure
12
nobody
days of
asked.
things we are surprised about publishing.
We did have a question or two left over from our last episode that people posted after we filmed. So let me grab that
Mhm.
real fast. So Peyton asked about an episode on children's books and about the querying process. We don't know anything about that, but we are going to try to have someone on to talk about it. It's just going to be in a while because, the holidays and just life, we're pretty busy right now, but we will try to do something about that. And then we also had the question, what conventions and conferences would you recommend? I have
Mm.
only been to one and then the pandemic hit, so I can't recommend a whole lot, but there are a ton out there. And I would recommend doing a search for conferences within your own genre. Like I could tell you the top 3 or 4 for thriller authors. I don't know what your genre is, but I would go to something specific to your genre. I think that is going to be your best bet, unless you are just wanting a general writing conference. Sarah, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I only went to one and it's no longer happening, which is too bad because it was really awesome and small and cool.
Yeah.
But I would say, go to your awesome supportive writing community, particularly on Twitter. Like, look
Mm-hmm.
up a few in your genre, find a couple that you're interested, and like put out a few tweets about it. Not just one. Like, put out a few so you actually kind of hit people's timelines, asking what
Yeah.
they think, or have you been to this thing? Often conferences have hashtags, and so you could maybe go to the hashtag from the conference, like the year before, and see who was posting on it, and either post on their timeline or DM them and say, hey, how did you like this conference? And, how was it? And, see if that's
The
a good fit for you.
Yeah, the other place I have found good information is Facebook groups for local writing
Mm-hmm.
organizations. If you post on there, people will recommend local conferences if you're hoping to stay somewhere close. When I moved to Texas, I posted and I got like 3 recommendations within a couple hours drive, and they were not specific to my genre, but it is potentially helpful. We had a question asking for tips and advice on getting published as a poet. Neither of us are poets. I'm so
No
sorry.
idea.
We do have an episode about using, what is that website? Duo?
Duotrope. So
Do they
actually, I
have
mean,
stuff for poets?
yes,
Or is it
that is the
all
one
okay?
thing that I could say might be
Yeah.
useful is duotrope.com. And
Yeah.
they are more of a database of literary and poetry magazines as opposed to being like a querying tool.
Yeah. So check on there. There's also the magazine Poets and Writers, and I have not personally read that, but I know that they
Mhm.
have content specific to
Yeah.
poets instead of just like short story and long form type
But
writing.
there's a huge community on Twitter and on Instagram too of
Mhm.
of poets. So, reach out to them.
Okay. And then Rachel asked tips for writing dual point of view in
Mm.
different tenses.
Ooh,
It's a pretty big
you can talk
topic.
all about that. I avoid dual
Yeah.
point of view like the plague. So,
So, I mean, okay, so just some basic things. For dual point of view, your different points of view need to be completely different people. They need to feel different in your head. The language needs to be different. It needs to have like it. For me, writing is very like musical and lyrical in my head. There's like a rhythm to it when I read it, and I can't define that exactly. I just know it when it's happening or not happening. And for different characters, it sounds different in my head. So if that makes sense, you just want them to be very different people. Sometimes people find that using like first person for one and third person for the other, which you can do. You can, in a given book, at least in my genre, you can have one character be in first person and one be in third person. So that is one way that some people partially accomplish that. They need to think like 2 totally different people with different preferences and different backgrounds. So keep that in mind.
The one time I did sort of get into thinking about writing a multiple point of view book, and this doesn't refer to tenses so much. A friend of mine recommended that I read some of Game of Thrones, and I have not read all of Game of Thrones. That's just not really my bag. But he said that J.R.R. Martin does an amazing job of capturing voice in different points of view, all in third person, which is kind of
Hmm.
amazing. And I read like, I read maybe half of the first book. I read until the first major character dies. And then I was like, fuck this. I'm not reading the rest of this shit. And it really was remarkable. Like all the different sections he has from all those different points of view, all in third person. And you could totally feel like the way he wrote them was so voicey and so specific to that character. Like there was one character who was kind of like naive and girly and princessy, and then there was like the grizzled warriors and the scheming people and the queen. And the way he did the voice made it so clear whose point of view you were in. You just knew.
Yeah, if there's something more specific you want answered about that question, let us know. For me, it's literally just writing one in each different tense. Like there's no, I'm not trying to make it sound like it's easy or simple because it's not. Like it's hard writing in two different people's heads. Maybe one piece of advice that would be helpful is with my last book, I had to write one point of view and then switch to the other point of view and then merge them because they were not similar, but they were not different enough that I felt like I
Right,
could
right.
go
You were
back and
talking
forth.
about like having to write kind of the entire story in one point of view and then
Yeah,
the other point of view, even though they were going to like lay together and
yeah. So
intersperse. Yeah.
with Make Me Disappear, which is the book I signed with my agent with, I could write back and forth, but one was male and one was female. And I think that was part of it. And they just had like such different voices in my head, like so freaking different that it was
And they
easy
were
for me to go back and
contemporaneous
forth.
too. I mean, they were sort of,
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
happening at the same time. Yeah.
yeah. But with the next book, I'm in dual point of view, dual timeline, and I could not go back and forth. I had to write one and then write the other. But I think that's going to be different for everyone. So I would say experiment and don't be afraid to try something different. And if you have a question more specific to that, let us know or DM me on Twitter and I'm happy to talk more about it. No. Okay. Well, remember to sign up for our newsletter and please give us a like and a subscribe. It really helps us grow our channel and reach more people. And we will see you next time. You can find me on Twitter at authorjustpain.
And I am at Sarah Reed Author.
Bye.